And live from Brussels, Mumbai, and Leuven, it's ZN
ZN
Live.
Live.
That's right. We are very excited today. We have a special guest, EU influencer Pieter Cleppe, and he is an expert with over 15 years experience in EU affairs. He is the editor in chief of Brussels Report.eu. He's been writing extensively about Europe. He's been covering the issues. He's the founder of Open Europe. We are very, very happy to have you on the show today. And I want to go straight into I think, pretty serious questions that we had since the election in the Netherlands, where we saw the rise of the extreme right. And it's not the first time we're hearing a lot of polls looking like there might be a wave. And I think this is what we could call outrage politics. I was talking about a book called The Outrage Machine, discussing how the internet amplifies outrage. So, what do you think is happening, and how bad do you think it's going to get?
Well, indeed, I do think that there is, first of all, thank you for inviting me. So I do think that there's, throughout Western Europe, a wave of discontent. People are unhappy, even if, let's say, in material terms, their life isn't always that bad, but they feel that things are going in the wrong direction, whether that's the case or not. And I think migration and disorderly migration plays a big role in that. Also, the fact that you have parallel societies in Europe, and of course, I think most people, even those people that vote for these right-wing populist protest parties in Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, as we've seen, Austria, I do think they appreciate that not everything about migration is bad. Actually, many migrants vote for these parties as well. We should not forget that. But I feel that the situation is not under control by the government, and that the democratic choices that have been made as to how many people can be welcomed are not being respected, because people are managing to sort of sneak through the border. And they are managing to stay even if they are ordered to leave the territory. So I think in all of these cases, there's of course regional differences, but migration is very important. Secondly, inflation, the loss of purchasing power. Of course, personally, I've always stressed how dangerous it is for central banks to engage in very activist, very expansionist monetary policy. This is the lesson of the 1970s. Basically, at the end of the day, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Mario Draghi is credited with having saved the euro, sure, but that did not came for free. He created a lot of money, or the ECB, and especially during the pandemic. Also, then we could see a lot of money creation, and at the end of the day, when sort of the factor whereby you had lots of cheap imports, mostly from Asia, from China, but also other places in the world. This was sort of keeping inflation statistics down. And that factor has, since the pandemic, disappeared. So I think that's an important reason why we have seen inflation. Thankfully, the situation has improved, but a lesson of the 70s is that it can easily return. So I'm not sure that everybody who votes for these protest parties would necessarily 100% agree with sort of the analysis that I made, but I do think deep down they feel that they're getting poorer. And in a way, it's the same sentiment that we have seen in Argentina, with the crazy libertarian Milei winning. With people being desperate, looking for an alternative than the failing economic policies. Of course, Argentina is an extreme case, but I think to a degree we see the same over here. You mentioned indeed the role of the internet, and I think that's undeniable that there's a lot more access to information than 30 years ago. But it's getting harder to filter what's true and what's not true, and what's reliable and what's not reliable. So all kinds of, let's say, dodgy actors are exploiting that. and this also must be a factor indeed.
Yeah, I think, I mean, my one of the big things I wonder about, because you gave an analysis of, kind of objective factors, be it migration, be it inflation, the economy, etc. What I'm wondering is, if you look back 5, 10 years ago, we've had moments when there was a lot of focus on migration. We had, at the same time as Islamic fundamentalist terrorist attacks, etc. And even the economy, we went through major crises. But it seems like now, when you could argue that there's less of an economic crisis than there was certainly in 2008 and during those moments, and an Islamic perceived threat like we had with ISIS and the terror attack on the European territory, yet people look as if it was far worse. And I'm wondering, how do you see perception versus reality, and whether that perception hasn't been massively amplified by the way people consume information today? In other words, how much of this perception is shaped by these new channels versus by objective facts?
I do think it's indeed amplified, as you say. We also see that sort of the length that a politician can survive as a politician is becoming shorter and shorter. And this must have something to do with the media environment that we're in. If you're a politician, you have to communicate all the time, or you're no longer relevant. You can easily, misstep. This is, I think, very tiring. I think the days are over when you could have, let's say, ministers that were technically very good in sort of the domain they were supposed to manage, and that were sort of then, let's say, communication zeros. Those days are over. You have to be both technically very good, and you have to be good at communication. And I'm sure there's exceptions, but yes, this is indeed, I think, the new normal. And indeed, new parties, protest parties, that are challenging the incumbents, they have much greater opportunities than probably even 10 years ago. There's a lot more visual. People will, I think, when they see a video of somebody, they will tend to trust that person more than just when they read a quote in a newspaper article. It's much more personal. TikTok, of course, Instagram. So yeah, I think that makes it harder for the incumbent political parties. And as a result, if you're, let's say, right-wing populist outsider or a left-wing populist outsider, look at Ireland, for example, with Sinn Féin, I think now the biggest party, then your opportunities are much greater than 10, 15, 20 years ago.
And I think on a related topic, it will be interesting, Pieter, to hear your perspective on what happened a couple of weeks ago with the Commission deciding to stop ads on Twitter or X. Obviously, this was a very significant move, as we know. And I think probably more drastic changes will happen next year, maybe with fines and with the whole situation of non-compliance with the DSA. So it will be interesting to hear from you whether you think X within this global context will still be the go-to platform for policymakers in the run-up to the elections, or do you have any other predictions of where they might want to conduct their online activities?
Well, personally, I'm very much opposed to the European Commission and its recent initiative, the DSA, the DMA. All these things. I'm not saying that we should not have any regulation. Probably it makes sense to have some kind of a framework, also to give some, let's say, some guarantees to these social media companies that they know what they will be liable for, they know what they will not be liable for. And that can definitely be updated. I'm not saying that, but clearly, especially the DSA with their system of trusted fact checkers. I'm very wary of that. I really don't like the communication of the French EU Commissioner, Mr. Breton, who is saying, "Oh, there's a new sheriff in town, and he's specifically, engaging with one company, and this called Twitter X." So I don't think this is a good development. I think we really should question whether, we want authorities that are cracking down in what I would call a rather arbitrary manner on platforms that are key to free speech. Of course, a different question is Elon doing well at Twitter X? I'm definitely on the side that is supporting him, but like if you see him scolding the advertisers, I didn't get the whole context, but I don't think that's very wise. I don't think that's necessary. But like just judging from my own experience on Twitter, I do not think it has worsened since Elon has taken over. I also don't think it has remarkably, incredibly improved. One thing that I really like, but this was apparently an invention that was already started before Elon took over Twitter X, is that you have this system of community notes. I really like it, and I'm sort of registered as somebody who is who's willing to also sometimes write these notes, and if you do that, then you see the draft community notes as well, which I find very helpful, because you have these Twitter accounts that are very useful, they're very quick, but then sometimes that goes at the expense of being accurate, and then you have, of course, all kinds of propaganda from the left, from the right, and in many instances the community note system has been labeling, has put a label under a tweet that is very helpful for people to get important context. If somebody says that Mumbai is the capital of France, yeah, you can tweet that, but then people can put a community note under it, and if enough people vote to say that this is a reliable community note, then it's permanently sort of posted under the tweet. And I think it's a great innovation, and fake news and fake claims were definitely a big problem, not just on Twitter, of course, on all social media. This could well turn out to be a great remedy for it.
Yeah, my feeling is that we're in the middle of this nexus, which I think it's very, very difficult to predict how far the changes to X will go and the impacts they'll have. For me, I think Musk's strategy is part ego, part business acumen, but I think there's a lot of ego that's getting in the way. And his recent talk at an event, insulting advertisers to their face just blows your mind, because you're going like, listen, you are a believer in free speech, and why don't the advertisers are allowed to not go with your platform? You can't blame them for saying, I don't want to spend money with you. So it's not even coherent. Now, having said that, and we are looking into this right now, actually, it doesn't seem like the mass exodus is taking place. And if you read the news, I think people are so eager to kind of have X collapse that they're missing the fact that it hasn't actually collapsed yet. And in fact, the commission is still active on X, and so are quite a lot of journalists. So it's not shifted yet. I believe that it could, but it hasn't. And what we have in Brussels is a lot of people saying, well, LinkedIn is the place to go. And I think that they're making a what you call in philosophy a category mistake. LinkedIn is something different from X. These don't really function on the same architecture. It's very interesting for certain things, but not for others. Now, what I'd be interested in is to hear what you think is going to happen next. Now, December, in theory, and this is what we've been reading, is Threads should be coming to Europe. Let's see if it happens, but that's what we've been reading. And Blue Sky should open to the public. And then, Mastodon is still there, but not doing fantastically well. Do you think any of those platforms could become more intense, or do you think everybody is just condemned to just play with all the platforms? What is your advice to people who are in communication and planning for the election?
Well, I think that's an easy question. For now, Twitter X is all over dominant. Is the only game in town, I would say. Yes, there's Facebook, maybe for older people. There's LinkedIn, but then apparently LinkedIn has sort of broadened out to become some kind of a Facebook, which some people don't like. There's Instagram, there's TikTok to a degree in political communication, but at the end of the day, where all the journalists are and where the news is being followed most quickly is on X. Will that change? I think at one point, but it can take a very long time. In search engines, despite all the attempts to rival Google, Google is still completely superior and dominant. And for now, X is going to be that. Now they have one great advantage is numbers. If you start a new platform, even if it's technically superior, or it has certain features that are just giving such a better user experience, I think even then, it takes time for people to move. I may be wrong, but I think when you have the sort of the marketplace for ideas and for news and for chatter, Twitter, then it's hard to take it away. And I listened to an interview with the CEO Linda Yaccarino, if I get her name right, and she said that Twitter is now becoming much more successful in the context of sports events. And that's I think that's interesting. I haven't been able to check to what extent that's the case, but I could imagine that certain sports like Formula One, athletics, maybe football to a degree, it's a bit like politics. There's a lot of statistics. There's a lot of, certainly baseball. There's a lot of cycling, things that you could discuss about it. Maybe Twitter is only getting stronger because they are expanding to other fields than just politics. I mean, because I think at the end of the day, politics and news is its core business, even if there has always been other other environments that have been also the subject of Twitter discussion. But I find this quite interesting that they are deliberately trying also to expand more to those areas of interest of people. So maybe all this talk of Elon destroying Twitter will turn out to be wrong.
I think. I mean, I would say the jury's really out. There is an inertia of the critical mass they already have and the fact that people are there, which holds. Now, in technology and on the internet, you can see some rapid shifts from one to the other. If you remember MySpace and Facebook, it kind of like they kind of crossed paths, and suddenly the direction was changing. Now, this has not happened yet. And I think because of all the noise around Elon Musk, it's difficult to actually see what's happening underneath. But I do believe that it's there is a question. And I think, the world of micro niches that we live in, which is it's not just where everybody is, it's where are the EU journalists, where are the commissioners, whatever. And I think if there's a significant move to maybe just establish a presence on a different channel, that might start triggering, because you don't need a lot of people to have the EU bubble discussion, at least in a kind of community. So let's, it'd be very interesting, I think, to see how Blue Sky and Threads come in. I also think that they might be more open as a competitive move, not necessarily out of ideology, and allow you to create these apps or these tools where you can post content once and it kind of gets posted across the different platforms. And if it's even more open, then you could even have the comments. You have blog posts using different technologies that are trying to create that. This is the POSSE, post once and syndicate everywhere, which I think is a strategic model that makes sense in the long term. So, but I think the reality is that it's uncertain. we're also seeing still a lot of discussion there. So I think it's a mistake to rule it out, but I also think it's a mistake to count on it completely, because it might very quickly change. But I think it's probably going to be around during the election cycle, because more people are likely to use it, even if they don't like using it. That, you know, this is not the time where you kind of abandon a communication channel. Now, when you are there significant communication trends that you're excited or worried about? Are you scared that, you know, OpenAI and I think Q-Star or whatever it's called is going to take over the world and destroy it, or amplify fake news during the election?
Well, actually, something you say like reminded me of AI. So there's an AI application, I forgot the name, but it allows you to sort of automatically post on different platforms. So maybe if sort of the dominant, the dominance of Twitter is challenged, ultimately it will be some kind of an AI tool that allows to indeed post wherever you want, in the sense that then Twitter becomes, or the way Twitter rewards posts will become less relevant. I don't know. So, but I do think indeed this looks like the great new frontier. AI, it's the way I understand AI is basically advanced automation. The European Union is now trying to regulate it, even if we don't have a lot of AI innovation here in Europe. But nobody really seemed to properly understand what it is, what it's gonna affect. Yes, you can write text much faster. What's gonna be the effect on lawyers, on journalists? You have these fantastic pictures that you can create. You can already see on Twitter now, on X, that some people are, I think it's Midjourney, one of these apps that they use to sort of, post a certain message and illustrate it. For example, if somebody would talk about Donald Trump being jailed, then they would also post a picture of Donald Trump in jail with I don't know, like some people looking at it, and this visual, I've seen that a few times already. I expect this to become much more frequent, and it is just it is a tool to strengthen a certain opinion. So I think that's definitely gonna increase. We've seen already in the United States, both Biden and the other side, the Republicans, coming up with AI generated videos to make all kinds of points. The migration chaos at the border. I forgot what Biden was coming up with. I remember it was also, or the Democrats, it was also some AI thing. This looks like a revolution you cannot miss. On the other hand, it also looks pretty complicated to see how you can apply all these tools. So I think we'll see a lot of experimentation, I would think, and maybe the age of trolls and robots. I mean, maybe that's sort of the old ways. That's sort of trying to cheat the system. Like the system has found ways to counter that in more effective ways. So if you want to sort of amplify your message, I think basically using stronger communication tools, visual communication tools, generated with AI tools, that's definitely going to be applied this year. No, from 2024 on in Europe here, I think.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that people are playing with AI. They're creating more content. They can create more stories. I don't think the deep fake is a game changer. We've had this before. It's just that you can make them faster and better. And the other thing is that these platforms often have very deep pockets to develop AI systems. They often have some of the most advanced ones. So you can imagine them using the AIs to detect things that compromise the integrity of their platforms. I do believe in, this is something we are experimenting with a lot. We have our newsletter, Zeitgeist News, where every week we put a little AI picture, we animate it. So it's our, it's our playground for our animators to try new things, and it adds color and visual, which actually means you're getting more engagement. And again, it's kind of like, it might seem trivial, but if you can find ways that create more engagement, tell the story better, because whoever tells the best story wins. Whoever gets the most attention wins the conversation, especially when in a crowded space. So I think it is going to be important, but it's a massive training moment now to learn which practice actually works. And I think it'll probably be one that people didn't talk about. I often find with the internet, it's like, it's a boring little thing that suddenly, a small 140 characters that becomes a tool when nobody cares about it at the beginning because it just looks insignificant. I think we're going to see AI applications that blow up when we didn't know that they would. And now, when you meet people who are new to Brussels, new to the EU, new to communication, what is the thing that you tell them, to get started in their career in life? What's your kind of advice to them?
What you mean, like people that want to find a job and that are graduated, you mean, or
yeah, graduates who want to start their career in Brussels, in EU affairs, or in comms especially?
Well, first of all, depends on what they're interested in. But I think internships are a great way to start. Of course, if you can afford it, and ideally it has to be paid, of course. But even if you're, let's say, I would say, there's many events in Brussels to meet people. But also, let's say, going back a little bit to what we were looking at earlier, if you're already working somewhere and you want to make more of a name of yourself, but it's sort of hard to get into publication because you're not as experienced, then I think Twitter basically allows, it's a very democratic way to allow people to showcase themselves. For example, if you're interested in situation in Libya, your Twitter account could be, let's say, then become a point of reference for people interested in that. If that's actually your expertise, and if you're posting revealing things, at least in my case, I've learned, I've gotten to know many people through Twitter X that I've then afterwards also met in real life, or it's been a way to keep in touch with people that I otherwise would never have been in touch with, or I would not have kept in touch with them as easily. I think social media in that sense, but especially Twitter, is actually, they always say that, or some people, opponents say, everybody's in their own little silo. But I think that's the case for Facebook. Maybe that's the case for LinkedIn. I'm not so big on LinkedIn. Maybe that's the case for Instagram. But I mean, if there's one social platform where you actually meet people that are, from a different community or a different way of thinking than you, I think it's Twitter X. I can't think of any other. I think even TikTok is, you follow certain people and then you get recommendations, right? But in my experience, it seems to not really force you to be exposed to dissident thinking. Maybe wrong on that, but so I think and like you say, to start somewhere, to start in even if, let's say, you move to another country, let's say you move to France and you're from Germany and you want to get to know the French, the political, what's going on in politics, and get to know people, maybe even personally at one point. Also, in that case, Twitter X is good, even if you don't understand French, because you can just ask the system to translate. So I think social media is definitely one way, one new method apart from just trying to go to events, meet the right people, but that's not always so easy, of course, if you're a newcomer somewhere.
Yeah, so basically work experience, internship, and building your network online. And I think, I think X is very interesting for this. I think that LinkedIn is very powerful for job searches and work experience, because it's kind of designed as a professional CV to begin with. And I think it's working quite well with that, but it doesn't have the openness in terms of structure that X has. So my advice would be try both. And more, because you're in a learning phase, and the more you learn, the better you are, and the more opportunities you can find. Now we have time for some quick recommendations, so let's roll the jingle. So Pieter, what is your recommendation for our viewers this week?
Well, of course, I'm happy to recommend my own podcast, the Brussels Report podcast, if I can be so shameless. But then also in terms of books, I'm currently reading a book authored by Agathe Demarais. It's called Backfire, and especially I think for people in the EU bubble, this could be interesting because it basically documents the history of sanctions. The author, she is a French former Treasury official, has also worked in the US State Department or Treasury, one of the two. She really gives a very comprehensive overview of how economic sanctions have been applied. And basically, one of her messages is that mostly it doesn't work, especially if it's if these are sanctions that are lasting for a very long time. They don't really have the intended effect. I must say on Twitter, she's more positive about the sanctions on Russia. But anyway, I think that's definitely a book that I would happily recommend.
Excellent. You have to give us the exact title so we can share it. By the way, the cover of The Economist was actually about how the Russian sanctions were not working right now. So that effectively Putin has managed to find a way to keep in control of the economy. It hasn't collapsed. I
agree.
Marcella, what are your recommendations?
Well, I think in the theme of ZN Live Communicators talking to communicators, I thought that a good recommendation would be this podcast that I think probably a lot of people know about by host Matt Abrahams, Think Fast, Talk Smart. And I think the podcast is really nice because it provides you a good overview of different tools and practices on how to communicate more effectively, how to get your point across, and to convey complex information, but also how to manage anxiety. Because, if you have to think on the spot and speak spontaneously, it's important to, have the right tactics in place to reframe conversations so that you can be present in the moment and, walk the talk. So that's my go-to.
Okay, my recommendation is by Adam Grant. It's called Hidden Potential, and it's his last book. It just came out. He's written several books that I thoroughly enjoyed, including Think Again. And he looks at, unusual ways of seeing certain situations, how to achieve things. His recommendation on the back, which I think is pretty impressive, from Malcolm Gladwell is, I read Hidden Potential in one sitting, loved it, and have been thinking about it ever since, which is the highest praise I can give a book. So if you like Malcolm Gladwell, you'll probably like this too. I thoroughly enjoy Adam Grant. And that's all we have time for. So have a good, I think, snowy weekend. I know it's snowing in Belgium. I'll be seeing that soon. And stay in touch, stay connected, and we will see you around. Bye, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.